greetings to you. You understand that you've all come together in this way on this day, and you understand that there's something that you're wanting. But actually it's something that we're wanting. What we're actually wanting here is for you to start to experience the group collective field. And for you to actually start to understand that the potency and effect that you have on the planet at this time moves far beyond your individual capacity. We have talked previously in 2014 and 2015 about the collective field and about collaboration and how important it is to be able to come together to unite in order to increase the format with which you're working and to increase the effect with which you're working. What we do say, however, is that this is the time, 2016, to start to become aware of your role within it. Because what's happened is we've moved from the individual to the collective, but for many of you, the individual was starting to get lost in the collective. And what happens is when the individual sense of self starts to get lost in the collective, you really start to, for many humans, begin to lose belief in what it is that you came here to do. Because if you don't have your individual role within society, how is it that you are validated? How is it that you can justify using oxygen, if you will? How is it that you can justify your existence here if you can't individualize what it is that you're doing? And yet we say to you, the challenge for 2016 is maintaining your individual perspective within the collective field. And this is really going to revolutionize how organized structure on this planet works. Because it's not about honoring the individual, it's about honoring the multitude of perspectives. In fact, we would like you to substitute the word individual with point of perspective. We would like you to do that for this year. Because what it becomes about is it becomes about increasing the awareness of the collective, increasing the awareness of humanity as a whole by embracing all these different points of perspective. Because the big shift in 2016 for humanity is its awareness of itself. How many of you have spent years increasing your awareness of your inner self? How many of you have spent years increasing your awareness of your own personalized journey, your own sense of individuality, your own work, your own life, your own karma, whatever you will call it? So much has been invested, and all the while, you're looking inwards. Agree? Looking internally, doing the inner work. We hear this a lot when humans come to see us. And while it is very valid and useful to do the inner work, the time has come on the planet where it is becoming less and less useful to do so. It is becoming less and less useful to look within. Now, in the new energy and the new paradigm on the planet, the format is designed for you to be looking outwards, for you to be looking into your externalized world to find what it is that you're looking for. Now, this is the opposite to what many of you have been taught, yes? Don't look out there, look in here. True? Don't listen to anyone out there, listen in here. And while that was very valid during third dimensional reality where nothing could be relied on except your own inner source, we say to you that because the planet's moving into the collective field of operation now, what you're actually going to find is if you start looking out into your external world for reference, you're going to see everything amplified. What you would normally find for guidance in your inner system, you will find on a loudspeaker if you look externally. Why? Because the unison of the collective nature on this planet is going to multiply your sense of self in everything. So let's just stop for a moment and think about this. Let's say, for example, that this one is walking down the road thinking, nothing in my life is changing, I'm extremely stagnant, I wish there was movement, nothing is happening, there's no point in me being here, everything stays the same, I'm not going anywhere, I'm not growing, I'm not learning. In fact, I might even be going backwards. Sound familiar? Of course. And yet, what this one would be doing in this case, and they're not enjoying being used as an example, by the way, is they would actually be looking into their own internal perspective. And in their own internal perspective, there may be stagnation, no movement, no change. Do you understand? No expansion. And yet, if they were to turn their attention from their inner state and start looking externally into the world as a witness to what consciousness and energy is doing on this planet, what would they see? They would see movement, they would see change, they would see rapid acceleration and speed. They would see the quality of light on the planet changing. They would see rapid growth. They would see the dismantling of the old and the emergence of the new, yes? How many of you have lamented that it's difficult to keep up with what's happening in the world? Yes? And yet you can say unto us, nothing is happening here. Really? So much is happening here. But where it's happening is in the collective. So this is all about perspective. If any of you are feeling like you don't have an answer to something, look what's happening around you, because everything that's happening around you is reflecting your inner state. It's doing it in an amplified way because the new paradigm on the planet supports unity experience, collective experience. Therefore, if you can't find the answer in you, you're going to find it out there. Why? Because you're all doing the same thing. The movement belongs to all of you. So this solar year 2016 essentially is about starting to turn your vision from here to here. It puts you in the position of being the witness to. It puts you in the position of being privy to the miraculous emergence of consciousness on this planet. Now, it's not to say that consciousness isn't already here, it already has been. But it is more detectable by the individual perspective than ever before. It was always the way that to detect consciousness in action, humans had to go into their inner state, because the rest of the external world wouldn't display it to them. Do you see? Their portal to the all was here. The paradigm shift on this planet essentially means that the portal to the all is now everywhere. So the importance and the emphasis of internalized states of awareness is going to change for you. And your emphasis and your focus is going to shift from what's going on in here to what's going on out here. Does it make sense to you? So it becomes less about the work and more about the observation. And so the planet for you becomes the signpost. What's happening around you becomes the signpost for what is happening. You necessarily will reflect that if you are in the position of the witness. Being in the position of the witness doesn't mean that nothing happens to you. You go into the state of witness from a point of neutrality, yes? Because you're looking at the world without judgment. You're just observing it. It's like going to the zoo. You go to the zoo and you look at all the animals and there they are, they're doing their thing. It's unusual to go to the zoo and say, I absolutely do not want to look at the bears, can't stand them, awful. However, I will queue up for the tigers. Do you see? This is very typical with humans. This is how they treat issues within the world. This is how they treat other humans. And yet if you're to go in a state of neutrality where you're just going to witness what is happening at the zoo, everything is fascinating. Agree? So because your state of witnessing is from a state of neutrality, it means that whatever you're observing in the external world becomes informative to you, and it becomes reassuring to you, and it becomes comforting to you, rather than there being a parallel of experiences that are happening or a conflict of experiences that are happening between what's going on in here and what's going on out there. How many of you understand that when you see humans in crisis, it is only because there is a friction between their internal state and their external experience. That is all it is. It is a friction between what's happening in here and what's happening out there. True? Because anyone that's in crisis either doesn't like what's going on out there or they don't like what's going on in here. They're rarely in a position, they're never in a position, to actually say, there's no crisis here, all that is happening is here, and that is the way that it is. Do you see? So it immediately removes the judgment. You need to be in a state of neutrality to be able to observe the movement of consciousness on this planet. And you need to be in a state of neutrality to witness what is occurring if you're looking for that guidance system. Do we have any response to this? Who's going to challenge us?
In the previous channel, you were saying that because there's so much chaos in the world, it had nothing to do with us anymore because we've crossed the bridge and we're in that point where we're back more like centered and kind of peaceful. And now you just said that everything around us amplifies what's happening inside us, so it's kind of linking it again to what's happening with us. So I just found maybe there was a bit of contradiction there.
The only difference here is that what you will find is that what is happening externally is going to be more reliable than what is happening within you. Because humans are often being taught that whatever is happening in here will result in what is happening here. Agree? Therefore, to be responsible here means being somewhat in control of what is happening here. Agree? But that is all about reducing friction. Is it not? Is that not about, if I do this, then this will be in agreement with me? Because humans don't like to have friction between their internal and external states. So what you're talking about, as we understand it, is management. Or not. What we're talking about is not actually being concerned with the internal state, but looking to the external state. That's what's different. That's what's different about 2016. It's not disregarding what's happening in here. It's saying, look for evidence out here. Because if you're able to do that, you won't actually be doing it in judgment. And this is the difference, because if you're doing it in judgment, you can say, well, at the moment my husband has left me, I've lost my job, I have no money, the external world is a disaster, therefore my internal world must be a disaster. Wouldn't that be the logical process? Yes. Or you could look at your external life and say, my external life is a disaster, it's because my internal life is just awful. I'm creating it. Very common thought process. What we're saying to you is, when you can look from a state of neutrality and witness what is happening in the world, you don't see the husband leaving, the job going, and not having any money as a complete disaster. You see it as movement. You see it as change. You see it as the old moving away to open up new pathways and permutations of experience. It's giving you lots of cues. It's giving you lots of hints. The external world is showing you. It's opening up all these new possibilities right now, 2016. The depth of experience is going to intensify for you. It's going to intensify, and it's going to intensify if you're willing to dive into it. But it's difficult to dive into it if you're always looking in here. Do you understand? Because what happens is, and we've seen it so many times, humans say to us, when I'm ready, I will dive in. I've just got a little bit more work to do here. Do you understand? What is it that I need to learn first? What is it that I need to let go of? What is my block? What is my issue? And it all becomes me, 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 me. And meanwhile, consciousness is setting up these marvelous permutations of experience that haven't been available on the planet for many thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. All sitting there waiting. And all the human can see is, oh, it's just a disaster. There's too much noise out there. I need to stay here where it's safe and work on my inner self. Do you understand? So if you're looking at being stagnant this year, it's going to be a very uncomfortable time for you. And if you're looking at working on your inner self, it's going to be very uncomfortable. Because the more that you do that, the more friction you're going to experience. Because the external consciousness grids on the planet, the paradigm is opening up into a plethora and a multitude of possibilities. The inner voice is only looking at one or two possibilities, and it's usually the same old song. Agree? So we're encouraging you very strongly to do the opposite of what you've been told in the past. We're very strongly asking you to look externally. Let's look at the energy of the supernova. Yes? Now, what happens with the energy of a supernova? There's two ways in which it can be experienced, yes? So usually when something collapses, it's what you understand to be the toroidal experience, or the black hole. Do you understand? And so everything comes towards you and starts to collapse. And so many of you have understood that life to you is like this collapsing experience. So things come towards you and then they collapse. And you draw things in. And life is very painful. And everything falls down. And many of you have been going through this transformation in the last 4 to 5 years. What you're collapsing is your history with this planet. What you're collapsing is any contractual arrangements you've had. What you're collapsing is any obligation. What you're collapsing is your belief systems. So what happens is it starts to collapse. And when everything is collapsed, there's a huge explosion. Now this is the difference between going inwards and externalizing. Do you understand? So the time for going inwards was about the collapsing of your belief systems. The time for going inwards was about freeing yourself from the structures that have been attached to this planet. It's about freeing yourself from your individual identity. And many of you have been working with this in the last few years. So when you have actually collapsed everything, it all becomes about the external expression, the external movement. That's when you start creating. That's when you start having a huge impact on the planet. That's when you start being visible. Do you understand? You go from the collapsing to the explosion. And that's what 2016 is all about. It's actually a reversal of movement. And yet for many of you, the pull of the black hole is so seductive, is it not? No, wait, there's more. I'm sure there's another part of my inner child that needs addressing here. There's another layer to the onion. There's got to be more. There's so much space here, I can collapse all of it. And many of you will continue to do so. But there's also some of you that have understood that, all right, I've collapsed a lot of my belief systems. I collapsed a lot about what I think about myself and what I think is real and what I think isn't real. And I'm really looking to have a different movement now. I'd really like to be effectual now. I'd really like to play. That's the difference between the collapse and the expansion. The collapse is about the work. Agree? Humans are interesting, collapsing about work. The explosion is about playtime. So 2016, midway to 2017, it's really going to be about the reversal. Mid-2017 right up to 2019, this is going to be the expansion period for you. So this year, very important, start asking yourself the question, how much rectification do I really need? How much fixing do I really need? How much more collapsing do I really need to do? Because if you're okay with being an aspect and a perspective for consciousness on the planet and being a representative of the collective, you should generally be okay with wanting to do something now. Do you understand? Are there any questions?
You mentioned before about if you want to be stagnant, then you're going to be, the it's going to be very uncomfortable.
It's going to be very difficult.
Is that different to still?
Now, stillness is really about sitting in the point of neutrality, because stillness is comfortable. If you're comfortable in being still, you're in neutrality. If you're uncomfortable about being still, you're stagnating. Can you see the difference? Stillness is the witnessing. It's quite a nice place to be, because you can still witness a whole lot of interesting things. Everything's very stimulating, but you're not generally affected by it. Yes? Stagnation is the frustration of wanting movement, but not being able to achieve it because you have, in your understanding, separated yourself from the collective field of movement. Understanding? Very well.